Greetings, everybody. My name is Kerri Mubaarak, and this is the Art of the Deck. This is the Wooing Nature flip through and review of the deck with the artist in mind. This came about because I myself am a visual artist and I'm also a visual reader. And a lot of times when you look at the book or you look at the deck or you look at the flip throughs about the book and the deck, then you get information about the person who either channeled the oracle or the person who put the entire project together or the person who actually wrote the material in the book. And then there's like at the back a little page about the artists themselves. So I am really into the art in the deck. I also read a lot into the art that is on the actual card, and so I like to focus a little bit on the artist and their contribution to the deck as well. So you get your flip through, but you also get a little history and a little information about the artists themselves. So today's flip through is the I-Ching by Klaus Holitzka, and this has become one of my favorite decks. You can tell because the box is completely tattered, and I usually make something to put the cards in, but I just haven't gotten that far because I've been enjoying the deck. Holitzka did an I-Ching deck. This is something that I thought I would never buy into, is an I-Ching deck of cards. I do yarrow, I count yarrow, and also throw coins, and so those have been kind of the traditions. But if you think about it, the coins are sort of a modernization of the counting of yarrow sticks, and then cards are a modernization of the coins. So fell in love with this deck, of course, because of the artwork and what's behind the artwork, and I really felt like Holitzka spent some time thinking about the traditions from which the I-Ching were born, and also the traditions from which this particular art form, which is calligraphy, is born, and both of these are from Chinese culture. So I really felt like Holitzka was sensitive in how he decided on the drawings for each one of these cards. If you have read the I-Ching or the I-Ching passages, some of these some of the drawings are abstract, like this one is more abstract, but as I flip through, you'll get a chance to see how he's incorporated the calligraphy into some really wonderful drawings that then depict the overall message that is coming through for all of us. So a little bit different form of divination, different way that the information gets to you, but again, this is really the flip through about the deck. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about Klaus Holitzka, his background, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the traditions that are associated with Chinese calligraphy, and then we'll jump right into the flip through so you can take a look at that. So first of all, Klaus Holitzka, born in Newburgh in 1947, used to be in a rock band, so spent some time as a musician and as an artist in the 70s. He traveled to Spain. There is the connection with his wife. He and his wife both connected then and around art and around the development of his own techniques. And that is around the same time that he got into Zen and got into Taoism, and then eventually into the art of calligraphy, making or writing calligraphy. So calligraphy, as we know it, is a stylized type of writing. In Chinese culture, it is that too. It is their form of writing, but there's so much more to it. It's not just, your penmanship or, how you make the cursive K or something like that. It goes a lot deeper. It goes into a study of nature. It goes into the Chinese traditions and what was considered to be very important, calligraphy and the being able to write and to develop the style of calligraphy that was looked upon as being of a high quality, so to speak. That was a part of their culture, and so they say that there were, I think, 6 ancient art forms that were considered to be the ancient art forms. Calligraphy was one of them. Ritual, music, archery, charioteering, That's interesting. And then one more, numbers, being able to work with numbers. And so calligraphy was up there on the list. Most people who even knew how to do Chinese calligraphy were well educated. Most of them were men, but there were women as well that knew how to do calligraphic images and representations of the writing at that time. So this is an ancient art form and an ancient writing form that goes all the way back to about 200 BCE. So it's very old tradition, and there are some aesthetic principles that go along with that tradition. Some of them are associated with the control of the brush, and then also with the white space on the back. So when one looked at a writing of any kind, even if someone did a painting, they would write on the side what the painting was about, and the calligraphy itself became a part of the total image that was there. So a very important style or artistic style that comes from this. Just a little bit more too about the natural side. Since we're wooing nature, we got to also talk about where nature comes into this as well. Nature was sort of the inspiration for the writing. So sometimes people would ponder on things in nature before they would begin to write, because all of this kind of tied into the total experience of the writing itself. The brushes that were made from animal hair or maybe a feather of something, and then it would be attached to bamboo or reed. And so all of that was a part of the experience, from the animal that the hair was pulled from to the bamboo itself and how that was selected, and then the ink. So traditionally, the ink that you used, you created your own ink. So you had your very own ink, and again, that was made out of some vegetable material or plant material or what have you. So writing was not just scribbling on a notepad. It was a total experience. It was a total connection with nature, and how you wrote and the way that you wrote on the paper and the space that you left behind the writing all became a part of this a part of the message, so to speak. And so I think that what Klaus Holitzka has done with this deck is that he has tied all of that together. He's tied together the traditions of Chinese divination in the I-Ching, and tied in the traditions of pen and ink drawing or calligraphy into the whole picture, and really made it a very whole and responsive experience. So these cards are very responsive. So I'm going to say I've had as accurate a reading with the cards as I have with the arrow, and as I have had with the coins as well. It's done a little differently, but very, very effective all the same. So that's a little bit about Klaus Holitzka, a little bit about Chinese calligraphy. If you want to read up on both, you can of course Google both of them and find out more about the artist and about the art that inspired this deck. And so I'm gonna proceed with the flip through. So again, some of these, as you can see, when we talked about Chinese calligraphy and the control of the brush stroke, we talked about white space, all of that has been considered in this deck. In some of the cards, you will get these very abstract drawings like this one, which represents passage number 1. But then he stretches the calligraphy into these drawings, which definitely give us a lot more to look at and a lot more to pay attention to. Some of these cards, as you read about it, or if you are really into I-Ching history, you will know that the passages or the messages are tied to the passages. The passages that are in the I-Ching and the messages that are there have some other underlying meanings, and in many of these cards, Holitzka brings that meaning into the drawing itself. In this case, we get a chance to see his brush strokes and the control over the brushstroke, and even the lack of control over the brushstroke. But I think all of that he has considered in his rendition, in these renditions. Here you have this image that almost looks like Chinese writing itself, but it also looks like a man standing on a precipice of change, or standing on the edge, leaning over the edge. Here again, another expansion of the brush stroke into the image of a person sitting by a tree with a cloud, the sun coming over the horizon. And I'll stop at some point to share with you one of the passages so you can see how the drawings are linked to the image. This one. Very powerful. So, I mean, you would definitely, if you're reading these cards, you'll definitely be reading the I-Ching passage, because that's the tradition. But again, if you're a visual person, this visual image definitely can take you to some different places. I love this one too. You know, even though it's abstract, we have heaven here, I believe, and earth below, and then this separation between the two is very distinct, and we see that even though the brushstrokes are very, very basic and very abstract. It's a mountain. So with this deck, what happens is you pull one card and then you choose a second card. The second card represents the changing lines, and then you read those lines for further meaning. There's one. I'm going to read that one. This is number 18, so I'm going to read to you number 18, or not the whole thing, but I'm just going to read the title of it. So this one is entitled Repair. So there's the calligraphy there. You see this man. He's taking the lines of the I-Ching and fixing it. Looks like he's building. So it's all together. It's all one here. Very, very simplistic drawings. Very simple deck. Not a lot of color. Not a lot to look at. Some people like a lot to look at, or like lots of color. This one is not that deck, but still, again, very effective. I think sometimes they're almost like Rorschachs. Almost like a Rorschach. So I really enjoy looking at the images. I will admit, you know, at the end of the day when I'm reading these, I pay more attention to what's in the passage than I do at the image. But there are times when that image just jumps right at you, and you can't help but pay attention to it. That's very yin-yang, isn't it? It just really draw you in. As I go through this deck and I look at it, there's some that just stand out, and I say to myself, wow, I wish I had a print of that for my wall. You can just imagine these in their real form, not in this printed card form, but can you imagine these drawings on the table of Klaus Holitzka? I would love to see them. The originals I would love to see. Just beautiful. Just a really beautiful deck. I like that one a lot too. So I'm just going to kind of move through these a little quicker. Look at that one. Man at the Well. I love this one. Looks like a figure 8. And this one is also one of my favorites. This one corresponds to the passage called the Cauldron. And so even the legs on the cauldron mean something. The handle on the cauldron means something. The hole in the middle means something. And Klaus Holitzka captured all of that imagery and all of that symbolism in the drawing. That one looks like an I-Ching coin. I love that. All right, right, so we're kind of coming to the end of the deck. If you are a card person, an I-Ching person, or an art person, or a calligraphy person, I highly recommend this deck. Even if you're not a reader, it's just nice to look at. Something to be appreciated for sure. All right, so that was the Klaus Holitzka I-Ching flip through and the art of the deck. Like I said, if you want to know more about Holitzka, you want to know more about I-Ching, you can always Google it, or you can have your very own Klaus Holitzka I-Ching reading by reaching out to me at Kerri at wooingnature.life. I'd be glad to share these with you in a real life context or a real reading context. And as always, I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful day. I hope you're having a wonderful life. And don't forget about the artist in the deck.